Away from Russia's invasion of Ukraine to the fears of a nuclear test by North Korea, the International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Grossi said that a seventh North Korean nuclear test would be further confirmation of a program which is moving full steam ahead in a way that is incredibly concerning. According to him, everyone is holding its breath about this, and further tests means that they are refining the preparations and the construction of their arsenal. The United States and its allies believe North Korea could be about to resume nuclear bomb testing for the first time since 2017.
Everybody is holding its breath about this because another nuclear test would be yet another confirmation of a program which is moving full steam ahead in a way that is incredibly concerning. Further tests, of course, means that they are refining the preparations and the construction of their arsenal. So we are following this very, very closely. We hope it doesn't happen, but indications, unfortunately, go in another direction.
And to health. In a global effort to raise awareness on breast cancer, October has been designated as the Pink Month. The Pink Month is a month where efforts to educate those concerned about the disease, including early identification and signs and symptoms associated with breast cancer. Now, throughout Breast Cancer Awareness Month, science forums, educational programs, and informational pamphlets and posters are used as means to disseminate information to the public. A number of special events are held as well, which focuses on the importance of screening and early detection of breast cancer. Joining us now to talk more about the awareness is Dr. Uchenna Okoro, a consultant oncologist at Evercare Hospital. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Experts like you talk a lot about early detection. Help us understand how that can be achieved, because a lot of times people are chasing other priorities.
Well, thank you very much for that question. When it comes to early detection, I think that is basically the most important weapon that we have in our arsenal against conditions such as breast cancer. How is this achievable? It's very simple. We need to begin to form a health-seeking habit as Nigerians, basically. So when we ask or when we talk to patients about the need for them to present early whenever they have symptoms that may be ascribed to any condition such as breast cancer. We do this knowing that when conditions like that present early in clinic, the chances of good treatment outcomes are very high. So we would always advise patients to, or the general public, to have a fairly good idea what their body is. For the case of breast cancer, always make sure that as a female that you check your breasts regularly and take out time to go to the hospital, probably once or twice in a year, to get a clinical breast examination done, and subject to yourself to the relevant screening tests that are applicable for your age bracket.
We'll come to the screening test shortly, but what are the common causes of breast cancer?
Not just for breast cancer, but most malignancies. We talk about risk factors, not really causes, because only in very few cases would you have, absolute causes for such conditions. For breast cancer, these risk factors could be broadly classified into the modifiable risk factors, which are basically the ones that you are in control of, and of course the non-modifiable risk factors, which are things that you can't really do anything about. The non-modifiable ones would be something like sex or gender, rather. So females, basically, once you're a woman, you're at risk of coming down with breast cancer. It is said that 1 in every 10 women globally is at risk of coming down with breast cancer. In Nigeria, however, that statistic is actually 1 in 8. And by 2030, it will be 1 in 5. Other risk factors would be age. The older women get, the higher the risk of them coming down with breast cancer. There are also genetic mutations that can also increase the risk of coming down with breast cancer, like the BRCA1 and 2 gene mutation. And of course, familial history. Once you have a family history of breast cancer, there's a chance of that person coming down with breast cancer as well. Then also, For the non-modifiable ones, I mean, for the modifiable ones rather, that would include, those that have had obesity is one of them, very important. So the higher weight is, you have stand a higher risk of coming down with breast cancer. For women, what we refer to as a wide estrogen window, that is women that, experience menstruation really early or menopause really late. They are also at a higher risk. There's also an increased risk when women or men, because men do also have breast cancer, take excessive alcohol and also indulge in tobacco smoking. So these are the common risk factors that we find that increase the chances of patients coming down with breast cancer.
So you talked about the importance of screenings and tests. Most times we hear about these screenings and tests that are free, and people go there, and before you know it, they're being asked to pay. Are free screenings accessible? How much are they accessible in Nigeria?
Well, I think to a reasonable extent, especially during this month of, this Pink October, a lot of non-governmental organizations are able to raise funds to allow lots of, not just patients, everyone in the general population to take advantage of screening, free screening. This is available in some government hospitals, and some private hospitals also do that as part of, CSR on their part. So it is available. I mean, for me, most importantly is after screening, what do we do with the results when we find women that are positive? So as much as screening is important, it is also necessary that adequate treatment facilities are made available for those that would be, positive when they come for this screening. So yes, some screening is available, but I mean, it should be better. It can be better, but it is what it is for now.
In Nigeria as well. Men are also susceptible to breast cancer. Some might wonder how come, and also how do you explain to men who don't believe that men also get it?
Well, 1% of all breast cancer patients would be men. So it's not that men cannot have breast cancer. Men do have breast cancer, but like I said, that is a very small population of patients that come down with breast cancer. And unfortunately for men, the treatment outcomes are really poor. So my advice to men is, one, they shouldn't feel that breast cancer is just a condition for women. It can affect men as well. And in men, the condition is usually, treatment outcomes are usually much poorer. So as much as, there's this campaign for women to always, do the examination and go for screening, the same goes to men, even though it's not something we see as much as in women. And really for men, our role in this campaign is not just to prevent male breast cancer, but also to give support to the women, because studies have shown that the women that have good support from home actually do well, not just in detecting the disease early, it's also during their treatment. They always have better treatment outcomes. So this campaign is not just restricted to the women. The men folks should also be part of it, not just because they can have the disease, because they also have an important role to play in the treatment for breast cancer in women.
And the World Health Organization said statistics in 2020 alone showed about 2.3 million women diagnosed with breast cancer and over 600,000 deaths globally. For Nigeria, I mean, I'm sure you see some of these cases. What do you tell women, men who, come down with breast cancer? How do you explain to them that perhaps it's not a life sentence and something can be done depending on the stage of the cancer, I believe? What do you tell them? And how do you think we can reduce the number of people getting breast cancer?
Well, just like you rightly said, I mean, what would determine, most patients, the outcome of their treatment would invariably be the stage of the disease. So awareness, I mean, the need for awareness cannot be overemphasized. If people are aware that this condition is out there and they understand the need for testing, then we would have a greater population of our patients presented at an early stage. And when patients present at this early stage, breast cancer could be cured at this point. In fact, 90% of breast cancer cases that present at an early stage are curable. So what we will tell our patients is, as much as possible, do encourage them to have screening done. For those that are down with the disease, breast cancer is definitely not a death sentence. There are treatment modalities, stage specific, and we would always do our best to make sure that they get these treatments where available. I mean, the biggest problem in a country like Nigeria would be access to treatment. Like I said earlier, it's not just detecting the disease. You need to make adequate provision for access to treatment, appropriate treatment, that is. So government needs to do a lot more, providing the needed facilities for treatment for this patient. The manpower needs to be trained as well. And I mean, funding, we still have, a huge gap in funding for breast cancer. So my hope is, and the hope of most oncologists will be going forward, that more investment is going to come into this field. And with that, access to treatment would be broadened. And at the end of the day, that would significantly impact, patient treatment outcome.
For breast cancer and other cancers as well, we would like to thank you. We appreciate your time for sharing your thoughts with us on this Pink Month, Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Thank you. We've been speaking to Dr. Uchenna Naokoro, a consultant oncologist at Evercare Hospital. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Welcome back. The world's richest man, Elon Musk, has completed his $44 billion, that's about 38.1 billion pounds takeover of Twitter. According to U.S. media and an investor in the social media firm, a number of top executives, including the boss, Parag Agrawal, have reportedly been fired. Mr. Musk tweeted, "The bird is freed," in an apparent reference to the deal. Mr. Agrawal and two other executives were escorted out of Twitter's San Francisco headquarters Thursday evening. The completion of the deal brings to an end months of legal wrangling, but it has prompted questions over the platform's future direction. Chief Financial Officer Ned Segal and the firm's top legal and policy executive Vijaya Gadde are leaving alongside Mr. Agrawal, according to U.S. media reports. Meanwhile, the European Commission says Twitter will have to abide by EU rules after the influential social media platform was taken over by Elon Musk, who describes himself as a free speech absolutist. Now, in response to Mr. Musk's tweets that the bird is freed, EU Internal Market Commissioner Thierry Breton tweeted that in Europe, the bird will fly by our EU rules. Responding to the message, but what the EU executive called a reminder of the framework that any company operating in Europe has to comply with. EU Commission spokesperson Eric Mama said any company operating in the 27-member bloc has to abide by the EU member states' restrictions on freedom of speech.
What Thierry Breton was doing, quite rightly so, was simply reminding what is the framework that that any company operating in Europe has to comply with. There are certain activities which are not compliant with the rules, regulations, and laws in the member states. In particular, as you quite rightly point out, things related to hate speech, to criminal activities, to terrorism, etc., etc.
Joining us to talk some more about this, Mr. Boya Digoke, a senior program manager at Paradigm Initiative, joins me now on the program. Thanks for joining me. So it appears that it's the real deal, the takeover, something that dragged on for months. Do you see any problems arising from how things have played out between Musk and the executives who we're told were escorted out of Twitter's San Francisco headquarters?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting development, how things are turned out, because if you follow the trajectory in terms of when Elon Musk started talking about buying Twitter, at some point it looked like the deal was going to fall off, and then suddenly it appeared that eventually he was able to pull through. Yeah, so it was clear that once he gets hold of the company, he was going to let some people go, because he has been very vocal about some of the, practices of Twitter that he wasn't comfortable with, and some of the key decisions that Twitter has taken. For example, the platforming of former U.S. President Donald Trump. He had mentioned that he didn't support that. He has his own views and all of that. So it is not really surprising that he had to let the CEO leave and some other key top executives. It wasn't surprising at all. So, but the question is that perhaps the manner in which they had to go in terms of, just escorting them out of the building. I think that there is a more dignifying way to let people go off their, to let people go out of their role. I think that was dramatic in my opinion. But it's yet to be seen what exactly Elon Musk has up his sleeve.
He has been quite dramatic on Twitter. But then a member of Twitter's founding team said they believe that he doesn't have a clear strategy, and that's probably why he tried to pull out of the deal before now.
Yeah, I actually agree with that view. You can tell that, and I think he is reputed for that type of, approach to things. When he started the idea of buying Twitter, he apparently didn't even know how the platform worked that much. He doesn't understand the strategy. He doesn't understand how the system works. So he was just as like any other person would look at an institution from afar and have very strong opinions about that institution without even understanding the working of the institution. It was clear that he didn't really understand the institution. But between the time he made that decision and now, from a statement that he released yesterday, you can tell that he's learned a bit of things, and he has also made some kind of clear decision on how he wants to lead Twitter going forward. You can already see that he had mentioned certain things such as obeying national laws, such as allowing for multiplicity of views, also directly criticizing the platforming of the U.S. president. So I think for now, he's at a place now where he has taken a position on how he wants things to look like going forward. And it is interesting to see how well those can stand the test of time. So the interesting thing is that he is now at a place where the former founders or former owners of Twitter, where they were in a few months ago. It's easier to criticize people. Now he's not going to be the guy on the hot seat. People are going to criticize his policy. People are going to ask questions and demand accountability from him as well.
Yes, and also another person on that list of former President Trump is also Kanye West, now Ye, who was removed also. On Elon Musk's view, he has said that free speech will be based on the laws of individual countries. Some critics say they see a problem with this, as it will empower authoritarian regimes. But then, with what Twitter has faced in perhaps the last couple of months, seeing a dwindling in terms of their financial results, do you think people should pay for a verification marker?
Honestly, I think that Twitter is getting to a point whereby it might even lose more value in the coming days, because the problem I see is that for the verification first, I think that there is a lot of motivation for people to want to get verified on Twitter, but that motivation comes from a place of what the platform is known as. If we move away from what the platform is known as today, I'm not sure that the motivation for verification will still be the same. So I wonder who else wants to pay for verification. If you go to Instagram, people are not paying for verification. If you go to TikTok or other social media platforms, people are not paying for verification. When people have to pay for verification, that is because you are assuming that the platform will still have the same value it used to have. My own suspicion is that in the coming years, if things change drastically, the platform might lose its value. People might move away from the platform. Remember, all those platforms, their power is in the number of people that are there. Their power is in the number of engagements that happen there. Once people don't find it as the platform for engagement, once people can't find it as a platform for interaction anymore, then it's going to lose its value. So if anybody is paying to be verified, they might just be wasting their money, because it might not give them the kind of value that they had anticipated that they are going to get from that. So,
Andrea, I think we have lost our guest, Zuboya Adegoke, talking about Elon Musk taking over Twitter. Well, we'd like to thank you, if you can hear us, as we move on to other stories now. We go to British politics, where number 10 Downing Street has said Suella Braverman has strong relationships with the security services following concerns about her return as Home Secretary. Reports have emerged suggesting that as Attorney General, she was investigated over the leak of a story involving MI5. Ms. Braverman was reappointed as Home Secretary just days after she resigned over separate data breaches. She stepped down a day before former Prime Minister Liz Truss did after breaching email security rules, also voicing concerns about the direction of Ms. Truss's government in her resignation letter. First elected to Parliament in 2015, Braverman is regarded as being on the right wing of the governing Conservative Party. However, several Conservative MPs have raised questions about her reappointment. In the meantime, new British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says that difficult decisions will have to be taken to get British government borrowing and debt on a sustainable path, adding that he is confident of fixing the economy. Prime Minister Sunak told journalists during a visit to a hospital in South London, during which he received a scolding from a patient for not paying health staff more money.
Family come visit you?
Yeah, they look after me very well.
Really well?
Yeah.
No. We face lots of challenges as a country, but I am confident that we can fix the economy and deliver on the promise of the 2019 manifesto, including having a stronger NHS. The Chancellor's already said, of course, difficult decisions are going to have to be made, and I'm going to sit down and work through those with him. But what I want everyone to know is that we need to do these things so that we can get our borrowing and debt back on a sustainable path. That's important because it means that we can get a grip of inflation if we do that. It means we can limit as best as possible the increase in interest rates, which is important. The leadership that we have shown on the climate is unmatched almost along the world. If you look at what we've done in this country, we're an example for others to follow at the pace in which we've reduced climate emissions, how we're going about protecting our environment, and those things are really important to me. It's important to me that as Prime Minister we leave behind an environment that is better for our children and grandchildren. I'm very passionate about that. I'm very personally committed to it. And I just think at the moment it's right that I'm also focusing on the depressing domestic challenges we have with the economy. And I think that's what people watching would reasonably expect me to be doing as well.
Dr. Charles Aholo is a law lecturer, School of Law, University of Nottingham. He joins me now for more on British politics. Thanks for joining me on the programme.
Thank you very much, Millicent.
So it's been about 4 days since Britain got another Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Is it safe to say that the UK is back to some political stability?
Well, when we talk about political stability, I think it is very important we realize that that term is a fluid term. And as a fluid term, it is amenable to a lot of interpretations. So I think we should get what political stability really means to be able to consider whether Britain is on the path of political stability. So it is the regularity of the flow of political exchange or the extent to which members of the society restrict themselves to the behavioral patterns that falls within the limits imposed by the political order. So that with that in mind, you would realize that we have had about 3 prime ministers, if I'm not mistaken, before the next electoral cycle, which is due in January. So that in itself is a form of political instability. But the extent to which we can achieve stability will depend on the policies of the present prime minister. It will depend on how far he addresses the cost of living crisis. It will depend on how he addresses the energy crisis. It will also depend on how the Tories meet their electoral manifestos, the promise they made to the British people on the basis of which they were elected, the promise of levelling up and those other factors. If he's unable to meet these challenges of statecraft, then we could face another cycle of instability because he might be removed from office again.
Well, before then, he came out with a set of members to form his cabinet, and Suella Braverman, has been a controversial choice. Are his reasons for bringing her back satisfying?
Well, one of the reasons that the Prime Minister has given is that he wants to run a government that addresses the electoral promise the Tories made to the people of Britain. And one of those promises is to give the people of Britain a greater control over their borders. And so we have had, even as Attorney General, Suella Braverman have been very, very tough. Have been very, very tough with respect to immigration. And many have accused her of going outside her powers as Attorney General by not presenting independent opinion that captures the interests of different stakeholders in the society. It is on record that Stella Braverman once called for the withdrawal from the European Convention on Human Rights on the grounds that it is affecting government's plan or thwarting government's plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. And many have called that a statement that is directed at tarnishing the important work the government is doing towards leveling up the provisions of the Human Rights Act and ensuring that that act achieves justice for the British people. And so she's a controversial figure. But then, remember, they made a promise to the British people, and one of that promise is that they want the British people to take greater control of their borders. And that is one of the reasons why they have called her back, and I believe to help the Prime Minister achieve that objective.
Let's talk about others on the list. There's also Michael Gove and, you know, quite a lot more in terms of who's in and who's out. Is there a question mark on Penny Mordaunt's position as leader of the House of Commons? Perhaps the price Mr. Sunak had to pay with the position?
Well, I would not want to look at it as a price that has to be paid for Sunak to become Prime Minister. Well, first, we need to realize that before this time, Penny Mordaunt was leader of the House of Commons. And that is a reaffirmation of her importance to that House. It's a reaffirmation of her qualification to hold that position. She has been leader, and she has delivered on the responsibilities of that leadership to the best of my ability. Many have said that she ought to be elevated to the position of Foreign Secretary because she laid down her interest for Rishi Sunak. I would also not want to concede that the Prime Minister is at liberty to choose the members that will form part of his cabinet, and he has a right to do so to ensure that his aspirations for the British people, especially the promises his party has made to the British people, is fulfilled. And I think that she considers that for him to be able to do that, certain important legislations will have to be passed. And don't forget that as leader, it is the function of the leader to deliver government legislative programs to ensure that they come to fruition and to manage the business of the House of Commons with the chief whips. And so this is a very important position, and she believes that with the experience Penny Mordaunt had gathered in that duty already, there was no need for change.
All right, today in the news, we understand that, you know, the Prime Minister and also Chancellor Hunt facing sober decisions on potential spending cuts, tax rises. They were told at a meeting that economic growth forecasts to be considerably lower than the last independent forecast. What is your take on, you know, what the future holds in terms of the economic crisis, and seeing that, you know, he has pushed a lot till, I think, November 17th on the solution, saying he needed to study more with what's happening?
Well, these are very trying times for members of the British public. We have an unprecedented level of government borrowing. We have inflation at the moment, according to the Institute of Physical Studies, is dangling between 9 to 10.1%. and has been fueled by the energy crisis. It has been fueled by the energy crisis. It has been fueled by the cost in government borrowing and other factors. So I think that these economic decisions are not decisions that ought to be rushed. I believe Rishi Sunak should be very honest to the British public. That is what he owes them. The economic decisions are not romantic decisions. You have to, if you want to address these economic decisions, you have to be very real to the British public if needs be, you need to raise taxes, you need to ensure that there are cuts, but then they should also ensure that these decisions are balanced against the interests of the people, because we also have a cost of living crisis that is unprecedented in the history of the British people. So they need to balance these cuts and these raises in taxes against these considerations. And I believe that that is why Rishi is asking for more time, to ensure that they could balance this consideration and ensure that at the end of the day, British people will emerge winners from the whole imbroglio.
Indeed, we hope for that too. Thank you so much. We've been speaking to Dr. Charles Ahodu, Law Lecturer, School of Law, University of Nottingham. Thank you for talking to me and have a great weekend. Thank
you, Mary, for having me. Have a great weekend too. Cheers.
In the last few days, there's been a big development regarding China's influence in Germany, with the German cabinet allowing China's COSCO, which operates the world's fourth largest container shipping company, to buy a stake below 25% in Hamburg's port terminal. This was an issue that divided the German government and caused a hefty debate in the country as Germany tried to balance its ties with its biggest trade partner without relying too much on it. The German cabinet allowed China's COSCO to buy a stake in a terminal in the country's largest port Wednesday, in a decision pushed through by Chancellor Olaf Scholz that triggered unprecedented protest within the governing coalition. With the support of Scholz's Social Democrat-led ministries, the cabinet approved a 24.9% stake investment by COSCO in one of the logistics firm. Well, joining us to talk some more about this is Thomas Sparrow, Deutsche Welle political correspondent from Berlin. Hello, Thomas. What exactly did the German government allow? What are the details of the agreement?
Essentially, the German cabinet allowed COSCO, so this big Chinese shipping company, to buy a stake at one of the terminals at Hamburg's port. Hamburg is Germany's most important port. Now, the details of this are as follows. COSCO will be allowed to buy a stake below 25%. That's an important number because previously they wanted to buy a stake higher than that, around 35%. And what's also important, according to the German government, is that China will not have any political influence when it comes to the port in Hamburg. So it's being described here as merely a financial investment. This is something that was favored by German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who, by the way, is a former mayor of Hamburg. But many of his closest ministers, including Germany's Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck, had expressed skepticism. So some say that this shows Olaf Scholz's leadership. Others say it reveals some cracks in Germany's governing coalition.
But are there any main concerns? What would be the benefits of such a deal?
Those who see this favorably see above all the economic impact, that it would bind a major shipping company to a major European port. It could bring jobs, it could bring economic stability as well. Those who see this rather cautiously, who say that this is a bad deal, specifically refer to Germany's past dependencies, for example, when it comes to Russian energy, and say that essentially, if you allow China to buy a stake in one of these terminals, you're creating future dependencies as well, and that is a problem, especially in political terms, but also in strategic terms as well. So there are different views when it comes to this. There are those who have warned that this is a major problem for Germany that is not learning from the past. There are others who say that above all, economic interests should be considered.
And Thomas, how strong are German-Chinese ties?
They are very strong when you look at that from an economic point of view. Germany's biggest trade partner is China, but when you look at the politics of all that, that is rather different. It is more nuanced, that relationship. There are clear differences between Germany and, by the way, not only between Germany, but between European partners and China when it comes to China's human rights record, for example, but also when it comes to China's foreign policy. So I would say that it is certainly important from an economic perspective. From a political perspective, it is rather more difficult. And it's against this backdrop, by the way, that German Chancellor Olaf Scholz will be traveling to China next week with a big economic delegation. So again, these two important points, once again together, the politics and the economic elements as well when it comes to Olaf Scholz's visit to China next week.
Indeed, we look forward to more on that. We'd like to thank you, Thomas Sparrow, Deutsche Welle political correspondent, joining us there from Berlin. To other stories now, this time health. Dozens of cities across China, including Wuhan, where the coronavirus was first recorded, have gone into lockdown as the country pursues leader Xi Jinping's zero-COVID policy. More than 800,000 people in one district in Wuhan were told to stay at home until October 30. The city of Guangzhou, home to the world's largest iPhone manufacturing plant, was also affected. It comes as China reported a third straight day of more than 1,000 cases. Earlier this month, Mr. Xi signaled that there would be no easing up of the zero-COVID policy, calling it a people's war to stop the spread of the virus. Meanwhile, the U.S. is over capacity at most hospitals as children are being hospitalized at record rates due to the rise in COVID hospitalizations coinciding with early arrival of flu season and a nationwide surge in RSV, or respiratory syncytial virus, which can cause breathing difficulty in young children as well as older adults. The result is a brewing triple threat that is already increasing emergency room visits and raising concern that hospitals could again be strained this winter. Triple threat viruses hit the U.S., and the Biden administration is calling on Americans to take action and get vaccinated. Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird brings us more.
Hospitalization rates for children in the United States are skyrocketing as many hospitals that serve children are nearing or over capacity.
With 3 different viruses circulating, one of the reasons why you might be seeing more hospitalizations is kids or adults are getting co-infections, some combination of RSV with COVID, with influenza, and by the way, other respiratory viruses. So if you can take 1 or 2 of them off the table by getting vaccinated, that's a big help.
As the U.S. battles with COVID-19, the flu, and RSV, the U.S. President Joe Biden has put a greater emphasis for all Americans to receive the updated COVID-19 vaccine.
And we're here with a simple message: get vaccinated. Update your COVID vaccine. It's incredibly effective, but the truth is not enough people are getting it. We've got to change that so we can all have a safe and healthy holiday season.
While the U.S. president has led by example by receiving his COVID-19 vaccine, the Biden administration COVID-19 task force has advised Americans that it is likely that Americans will need to receive a COVID-19 vaccine yearly.
Winter is a time when viruses like COVID spread more easily. We're also seeing a rise of other seasonal viruses like flu and RSV. And we know that COVID is still evolving. We're seeing new subvariants. We're seeing an increase in cases and hospitalizations in Europe. So we know that there are some challenges ahead. But the great news here is that unlike past winters, we are in control. We have the tools we need to ensure folks have a safe and healthy holiday season. And the single most important tool is the updated COVID-19 vaccine. So let me just take a minute to summarize what's at stake here. The updated COVID-19 vaccines were designed against the BA.5 variant. That is the dominant variant in the United States.
The United States is headed toward the winter months, and the U.S. is at risk of an increase in COVID numbers unless U.S. vaccination booster rates increase. From Washington, Maria Bird, Channels Television News.
And it's a nation most of the times in the news for nuclear threats and testing, but this time it's ice cream and fashion. A new ice cream factory is completed in the capital, Pyongyang, and according to the government, it is aimed at improving the people's, quote, civilized life and well-being. Video filmed by KCNA shows various ice cream products and beverages being produced and packaged at the newly built Taesongan ice cream factory, as well as guests attending an opening ceremony of the factory. Elsewhere in Pyongyang, North Korea adopted augmented reality AR mirror at a fashion exhibition to simulate new style without trying on actual dresses. In the video released by the North state-run television KRT, visitors were seen trying on various types of dresses on AR mirror. According to state media, about 540 units across the country joined the Women's Clothes Exhibition 2022 at the 3 Revolution Exhibition House in Pyongyang and displayed various types of fashion items for women in their 30s and 40s. The exhibition opened Thursday will be held until November the 9th. Enlightened foreign sides to North Korea. Well, a team of 3 adventurous rowers gear up for a 5,000-kilometer challenge to cross the Atlantic Ocean, and they are raising awareness on the consequences of marine pollution. Take a look.
Holding on to the oars, a rowing team of 3 scull their boats as they train to cross the Atlantic Ocean in December to raise awareness on plastic pollution in the ocean. Formed in 2021, the Arabian Ocean rowing team took on the challenge to row 5,000 kilometers across the Atlantic Ocean from La Gomera off the coast of Africa to Antigua in the Caribbean on an 8-meter-long rowing boat.
Before we arrive on the ocean, where there's a huge amount of work involved in that part, and then when we're on the ocean itself and focusing on that, on the row, it's going to be hugely exhausting, emotionally, physically. We'll miss our families very much. It will be an incredibly tough time. So I think what we've been working on building up is really the grit to get us through. And we'll have satellite phones so we can call our families from time to time.
The team partnered up with the United Nations Environment Programme for the Clean Seas campaign and will conduct tests during their journey and provide samples from the ocean to scientists.
The reason about taking on a challenge like this is because it attracts attention, and we want to use that attention to help promote the environment, and specifically plastics in our ocean. They're everywhere. We're going to be taking samples from day 1 through to day 50, and unfortunately we've been told by scientists that at every stop on our journey we're going to be finding microplastics in the water, which is frankly unacceptable. And if they're at every stage on our journey on the water, what does it say about our oceans? What does it say about what we're eating, what we're swimming in? Now, people are aware of this, but they're not doing anything. So we hope to use our voyage to raise awareness about this.
According to Chief of the Source to Sea Pollution Unit at the United Nations Environment Programme, Tessa Govers, 11 million tons of plastics flow into the ocean every year, which is the equivalent of 1 garbage truck of plastics that is dumped in the ocean every minute, a number expected to triple by 2040 if no action is taken.
The Clean Seas campaign is now turning the attention to the issues and to the challenges that the ocean is facing. And I'm giving the example of plastics, and I also think that the rowing team will certainly very much pay attention to that as well. But there's other threats to the ocean as well, such as, for example, nutrient pollution and wastewater that is being discharged without proper treatment.
Once they sail off, the team will be rowing 2 hours on and 2 hours off all day, all night for 50 days.
A 5,000-kilometer challenge across the Atlantic Ocean. Is that amazing or what? That's our program this evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Bye for now.